I had never played a game from the Mana series before Visions, but after having played Visions, I think it will likely not be the last game of the series I play. While it's far from a perfect game for reasons I will get into later, it was undoubtedly a fun game to play because the developers did their best to focus on the strongest aspects of the game within the limited budget that they were given. Visions of Mana is a great time for those looking for some action combat, fun power systems, and plenty to explore and find. The game avoids bloat while giving a satisfying overall experience, which is why I am happy to recommend it to those interested in the game. Visions of Mana is an action RPG developed by Oka Studios and published by Square Enix. Visions of Mana served as the first new game in the Mana series since 2006, although there have been remakes and remasters since that release. Despite the time gap between games, the studio was able to return many of the original creatives who worked on the series for Visions, even if it was developed by a different studio. Unfortunately, prior to release, Oka Studios was effectively shut down, keeping on a bare-bones staff to see the game to release, and then disbanded entirely a few days after the game's release by the Chinese company NetEase. Honestly, given that background, it's a wonder the game turned out as well as it did, and I hope that those affected from Oka Studios can find a new workplace that will put their talents to use. Visions of Mana released on August 29, 2024 for PC, PS4, PS5, and the Xbox Series. Reviews have been very positive on Steam, although critics have been more mixed overall. Although there seems to be a general consensus that the game is good but not spectacular, with some janky elements as well as occasional technical issues. Visions of Mana follows Val, a young warrior appointed to be the soul guard for the Alms as they complete their pilgrimage to the Mana Tree. Every 4 years, alms are appointed for fire, wind, water, earth, moon, wood, dark, and light to complete the pilgrimage and offer up their souls to the Mana Tree in order to preserve the magic and bounty of the world. The Soul Guard is responsible for protecting and guiding them on their journey, and Val assumes that responsibility as his childhood friend Hina is chosen as the Alm of Fire. Their journey will take them to lands they never thought they'd visit before, meeting people from around the world and exploring and fighting along the way. Along with their fellow Alm companions, Val and Hina will discover more about the world from its history to the present, how they fit into the world, and what they can do to shape the future of this land. Visions of Mana's story surprised me in a good way. The writing could get cheesy and sometimes undercut its deeper moments with humor, but the story itself was a bold swing that took some chances in the narrative. The overall result is a memorable story that has stuck with me after completing the game. This is a case of the sum being greater than the parts itself. The characters are solid and amusing, but lack the depth to make for some of that thematic resonance that the truly spectacular RPG stories manage to pull off. The land and people are interesting, but not well developed enough to enhance the whole. The writing and story is therefore dependent on not majorly misstepping, which is an accomplishment, and in having some intriguing ideas by steering away from some of the easy answers in the story. I know a lot of that is vague, but it is purposeful in order to not spoil some of the stronger elements of the story. You're in for a ride, and I hope you enjoy it. One of the greatest feelings a game can give you is the thrill of adventuring, discovering new things, overcoming challenges, and bonding as a group. That is the vibe I got from Visions of Mana. Certainly I know of other games that have done each of those things better, but Visions of Mana was a fun adventure on all fronts, and I attribute plenty of that to the construction of the world and all that you can do within it. Visions of Mana has several regions of the game corresponding to the different elementals. For instance, Hina and Val's home village is in the area guided by the Fire Elemental, a volcanic region with the corresponding farmland that comes from rich volcanic soil. I found the different locations fascinating because unlike some fantasy lands, they weren't just one thing tied to their element. That helped make them all distinctive when exploring around. As for the actual exploration, there are plenty of things to collect, from the grizzly syrup you can use to exchange for goodies, the various treasure chests littered around the map, challenge battles, gems to infuse with to get additional elemental points to get new abilities, fairies that give temporary boost to money or experience, ruins to explore, and more. There's a strong sense of, ooh, shiny, while exploring around, and the game also gradually unlocks new ways to travel around the world, from riding on the back of the adorable Pakuls to surfing the waves on the back of a sea turtle. When it comes time for battle, your party has 3 active battle members. Once you've initiated an encounter, those are the only 3 who will be fighting, and you can switch between which one you control at any point, but you can't swap in an entirely new party member during battle. For the party members you don't control, you can set their tactics in the menu and change them throughout the battle. For the most part, They're fine and unobtrusive. However, in certain boss battles, the AI's inability to get out of the way of certain attacks if their tactics are not explicitly set to evade and defend means you'll be spending a lot of time getting them back on their feet. In those instances, even though it took a while, I set the AI to evade and then did all the damage myself. Thankfully, those battles were few and far between, otherwise the game would have been a slog to get through. Each character has two different kinds of standard attacks, a quicker light attack and a slower but bigger damage dealing heavy attack. Your combat abilities and items are stored in an item or ability ring that you can bring up to pause combat and complete an action. You do have a limited number of items you can use in a combat encounter even if you have more of that item in your inventory, so there are some limits to item spamming to get through a tough encounter. You can also dodge and air dash to avoid attacks. Each character has a class that can be changed depending on what elemental the character is assigned to. This affects not only the party members' combat abilities, but also what enemies they are strong or weak against, and each class has a special elemental vessel ability that will be highly useful in battle. For instance, the Moon class line allows you to use the elemental vessel that slows time for the enemies, allowing you to wail on them without worrying about them attacking back. You can enhance this and other stats from the elemental plot, but I'll get into that later. The final thing for combat itself is of course the required RPG big flashy stop everything and watch the carnage ability. In Visions of Mana's case, that would be the class strike. Once the meter is filled up from you dealing or taking damage, you can unleash the class strike to hopefully devastating effect. This is a shared meter between the party members, so once one uses it, you have to build up the meter all over again to use it for someone else. The enemies themselves are a unique group of critters with fun designs. As with monsters in any game, it's always great to have a distinct style of enemies, and I think the Mana series accomplishes that. As for difficulty, the game has thankfully color-coded the enemies, even the basic ones, according to toughness. You also have special purple enemies that are a greater challenge akin to a mini-boss. Then you have the bosses themselves. I enjoy a good boss battle, but I wish Visions of Mana had managed to have consistent quality for their battles. There were plenty of good bosses that gave a strong challenge, maybe even required a couple attempts. But as I mentioned earlier, there were some fights that dragged on because of the way the game was designed, especially with the other party members not being able to dodge attacks properly. It's possible those bosses would have been great in a game with better AI scripting, but you work with what you got, and unfortunately that was to the game's and the player's detriment in this particular case. That brings me to the progression and customization in the game when it comes to your party members. As I said before, each character can equip an elemental vessel that changes their class. These classes have differing weapon types, stats, and outfits, as well as abilities you can learn from the elemental plot. You can use points or collectible clovers to pick up new abilities, either active abilities to use in combat or passive abilities to grow your party members' stats. Mix and match between classes to find the perfect combination, and you further customize them via the ability seeds. In addition to equipping weapons and armor, you can equip ability seeds that can give stat boosts, extra active abilities, and other fun enhancements. This is how you build out your party and emphasize each character's role in combat. You can exchange and enhance ability seeds later on in the game, and your ability seed slots expand if you find particular items called chalices. It does veer more into micromanaging equipment than I usually like in RPGs, but those who love to play around with systems like this and make some truly broken combinations will have a field day. The main bit of side content, or the appeal of going off the track, is for exploration purposes that I mentioned earlier. There are plenty of side quests you can complete which give some additional rewards, but for the most part the side quests are very basic. If you've played an RPG in the last decade, you've seen the kind of side quests that you'll be getting in Visions of Mana, and not much depth beyond that. There are some decent rewards, but I never found them compelling enough to keep going with the quests, especially towards the end of the game when I wanted to focus on the main story. There are also challenge areas that you can take on where you beat back waves of enemies to get a special treasure, or the colored crystals around the land that you can get more elemental points from to use in the elemental plot. The game helpfully lays out just how many of these, plus treasure chests, are in each area. Since you will need to backtrack to get them all, I do appreciate the game communicating that information to the player. Visions of Mana's presentation is a study in mixed quality, and by that I mean the actual art and design of the game is fantastic. The colors are rich and gorgeous and enhance every environment and moment in the game. I feel the world around the characters and how even the most barren areas have so much personality personality to them. The character designs as well and the variety of outfits for the classes each give a unique feel while fitting the characters perfectly. Then you come to the animation and you realize the boat doesn't seem to be in motion at all. The characters' faces are so shiny and lack a lot of expressive qualities. The voice acting is also a mix in quality, as a good number of the performances are excellent, and then you'll have some odd voice acting choices that detract from the scene. The UI has so much useful information and shows exactly what you need to go to and what is around each area. Even the battle UI is very clear and, like the game itself, uses colors to help convey information in a clear and concise manner. Then you have the UX, which has a wonky camera when you're locking onto targets in battle. A lot of this I do attribute to the budget aspects of the game. The desire and heart to make this a polished, fantastic looking game is there. I'm just not sure the resources of money and time were as well, which is unfortunate. The game is still enjoyable and easy to play, but it's hard not to look at the game through the lens of what it could have achieved. That being said, the music is consistently good, so at least there is one area of the presentation that was great from beginning to end. Visions of Mana is a game that will likely forever serve as a what if for the series and in general for the game itself. What if they had more time? If the parent company had more faith in the developers? And you know what? In spite of all that, they made a game that was still a lot of fun. It is a flawed game in several ways, but the central question of, is this a fun game to play, to me is a resounding yes. I feel like Visions of Mana will remain a memorable game for me for years to come for its storytelling, combat system, vibrant art, music, and the progression system. If all of that looks good to you, I do recommend giving Visions of Mana a try. I sincerely hope this is not the Mana series' last game, but we shall have to see. What did you all think of Visions of Mana if you played, and do you want to see me play more Mana games in the future? Let me know in the comments, and give this video a like and subscribe if you have not already. Have a great day, and happy gaming.